Firstly, there's the tendency of the rate of profit to decline. Marx wrote that since the aggregate mass of living labor operating the means of production decreases in relation to the value of these means of production, it follows that the unpaid labor and the proportion of value in which it is expressed must decline as compared to the value of the advanced total capital. In the last half century especially, this has been proven right. The last half century has seen the overall steady decline in the amount of corporate profits within the United States, even as neoliberalism has served as an attempted compensation mechanism for the bourgeoisie in this country. Neoliberalism has served as a way to redistribute wealth upwards as a means for trying to make up for this increased efficiency. But the fact remains that since 1948 alone, the profit rate in the United States has decreased by a total of between 25% and 33%, depending on whether you measure fixed assets in historic or current costs. And in this last year, we've continued to see an increasing anemia in the state of capital in this country. So as history is showing, the rate of profit is inevitably declining despite capital's attempts to make up for this decline. Secondly, there is the unavoidability of ecological collapse under capitalism. About capitalism's tendency to destroy the land that it depends on, Marx wrote that the more a country starts its development on the foundation of modern industry, like the United States, for example, the more rapid is this process of destruction. Capitalist production, therefore, develops technology and the combining together of various processes into a social whole only by sapping the original sources of wealth, the soil and the laborer. This is also being proven by history. In addition to the unprecedented soil crisis, degradation of the soil, and the sixth great extinction that we've entered into, climate change is already rapidly shrinking the human capacity for inhabiting this planet. It's estimated in one study that I'll link to in the comments below that within the next 50 years alone, around 1/5, something like 20% of the land mass on Earth is going to be rendered uninhabitable by climatic changes. This is going to very much shrink the ground on which capital can work. It's going to shrink the market access that the bourgeoisie will be able to operate within. Again, despite the attempts to compensate for this through austerity, privatization, the cutting of wages, in the face of the kind of ecological and climatic collapse that the planet is facing as a result of this socio-economic system, inevitably there's going to appear a huge deficiency in the vitality of global capitalist markets, which brings us to the third factor that I'm thinking about, the fact that there can't be capitalism in one country. The Marxist scholar Michael Parenti has written that multinational corporations, as their name implies, need the entire world, or a very large part of it, to exploit and to invest in and expand in. There can be no such thing as capitalism in one country. And this is, again, being proven right by the increasing economic anemia of the United States and its partnered imperial powers. U.S. GDP, Eurozone GDP are continuing to suffer. If you're honest about it, GDP in these places are not really recovering very effectively from the big hit that they've taken in this last year. And you can also look at places like Australia, which has been experiencing some market deficiencies as a result of its participation in the Cold War with China. And this is what a lot of these market deficiencies stem from the increasing economic isolation that the pro-imperialist bloc has been experiencing as a consequence of its participation in this destructive new Cold War against Russia and China. These factors are exacerbating the other destructive variables that I've mentioned, the environmental degradation and the inevitable decline in the rate of profits. It all ties in, and it all leads to the inevitable conclusion that eventually capital is going to find itself in an extremely weakened state, even in the countries where it's traditionally been strongest for capital, even in the core of global imperialism. Perhaps especially in the core of global imperialism, the United States, which as a consequence of its destructive militarism and its investment in neoliberal austerity that's unique even among its imperialist peers, has been experiencing a unique amount of damage from the pandemic, which is of course ricocheting across its economic sphere and dragging it into a long-term depression. Again, it all ties in, and it all leads to the conclusion that capital can't be sustained.